Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe.
And today we're going to talk about a topic that is very dear to my heart, which has been a follower and interest of mine when it comes to sewing for maybe a couple of decades or more, which is sewing jeans. Because you, Malena, you suggested that we should talk about this today. So what are some of your thoughts on this topic and what we could talk about today?
I think sewing jeans is it can be very intimidating for people especially if you're a beginner sewist because denim fabric is so heavy, like it's a really it's a heavy fabric. So like what are the requirements for the machines then, and to get the jeans to fit correctly? I mean, that could be really tricky, and they have so much detailings on them. So yeah, I think a lot of people dream of being able to sew your perfect jeans, but I think to actually start doing it could be very intimidating. And since you have written a book, I thought that, well, I mean, this is the perfect opportunity to talk how to and where to start. And well, maybe the first question is like, why did you write a book about this?
Yeah, it's a long story. Because I have always had a really difficult time finding jeans that fits my body. And I should also mention that I'm quite height challenged. I am 160 centimeters, which I think is roughly about 5'3". And in Sweden, that is very short these days. I know it's very different from different countries, but it's not that common anymore that you are that height. So first of all, it was tricky due to that. But most of all, I had a lot of fitting issues. I found that all the jeans were either too tight at the legs, or they were too tight at the waist. And so it was really discouraging to go into dressing rooms and trying out jeans, because that was kind of like a painful experience. And jeans, even though they can be tight-fitting, they should still be comfortable. And I had really, really difficult finding those. And sometimes I managed to find a jeans brand and a jeans style or design that worked well. But every single time they discontinued that particular model. So then I was like... back to square one. So, and I do love jeans. I mean, if you follow me, you know that I'm very into like skirts and dresses, but I also wear a lot of jeans and like a casual kind of dresser. So for me, jeans is a very important staple. So that's how I began like trying to figure out how to make your own jeans. And I think I made my first pair of jeans. I try to remember now. It must have been around it's over 20 years ago when I made my first pair of jeans. And so that's kind of the interest. And I was actually pleasantly surprised with it wasn't that difficult as you might think. There are definitely some challenges when you start sewing your own jeans. But I think a lot of people ask about your sewing machine. Of course, you have to have a good quality sewing machine. You can't get one of those like no names grocery stores sewing machines that are like super cheap and very flimsy. I think you definitely need to have a good sewing machine, a good quality sewing machine. I always use older sewing machines, so I don't own I've never owned a new sewing machine, but I've successfully sewn jeans with domestic sewing machines using like older, like sturdy, mere cast iron sewing machines. For instance, in Sweden we have the brand Husqvarna, which I think is called Viking in other countries. It's a really good brand. Now I'm using a Bernina from the 80s that is also really good with sewing denim. So it's not impossible to do this on your own home equipment. It's actually quite fun. And unlike sewing with knits, which we do talk a lot about because that's our one of the areas of expertise, jeans is quite nice because it's much easier to control the fabric, because the good thing is that it's actually quite stiff and rigid. So it's actually not that difficult, if you just know the right method. So in fact, I would sometimes say jeans is perhaps easier sometimes than sewing with knits. And if you're curious about how when we talk more about sewing with knits, you should definitely check out, I think it's episode 2 maybe, that we go into details about sewing with knits. So that's how I kind of started with that rather. I was pretty successful, even though I definitely made a few mistakes.
Yeah, but that sounds good that you can manage with your own home sewing machine. The only thing I think like major to have the right needle then.
Yeah,
you can't have because I have a ballpoint needle always since I sew a lot with jersey. So I'm like that's I never would use it for denim. Of course, it would break like instantly. So you have to have a thicker needle, right?
Right, a thicker needle, and also invest in a good quality needle brand. I really love Schmetz, I think they're called. They are readily available, I think, in many parts of the world. And Oregon is another brand, but I really like Schmetz because they have color codes now you can easily see. And there are two type of needles that I highly recommend. First of all, you should get the denim or the jeans needle, which is I think goes up to 120 or I don't remember top of my head these. Maybe it's number 16 or something like that in other countries, but it comes in it comes in a rather large size, but my absolute favorite needle is the top stitching needle, which also Schmetz has, because that's designed to create really beautiful top stitching. Because as we're going to probably talk a lot about top stitching in this episode, because that is probably one of the more intimidating things when it comes to sewing jeans, to get the top stitching nice, because you're using contrasting thread. So you don't want to have this like an unintentional wavy top stitching, because that can, you could of course embrace the fact that, it's home sewn, but sometimes I know many of you listening really like, you're a stickler for, details. So getting the top stitching right is definitely something a lot of us want to achieve. So yeah, check out the Schmetz denim brand, denim, and also the top stitching needles. And of course, depending on the thickness of the denim, you should use a different type of needle. Some denims that you buy in stores isn't that heavy, so you don't have to have the largest needle. But yeah,
I think I'm a little bit traumatized by this because when I was studying, I was in Borås actually for like half a year in Sweden as an exchange student. And then I don't exactly remember what kind of project it was, if it was actually my final thesis or... but anyway, I was sewing jeans, and the next day we were going to have some presentation. And I think it was when I tried to do the belt loops, if it was that I wanted to sew a bar tack on the belt loop, that the machine and needle, it got stuck. It was so heavy, and I used a really super heavy fabric as well. And it got stuck. I couldn't get the needle up. So one of the guys had to come in the day after and actually removed my jeans, because it was really late in the evening, of course, before the presentation. And you're there late evening, tired, and it's like, okay, so I guess my jeans are gonna sleep here now with the machine. I'm just gonna leave it and go home then. I can't do anything. So that I think I made two proper pair of jeans, and that was that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think everyone has gone through that exact same experience. So yeah, it's not that straightforward. and
this was actually with industrial sewing machines. It wasn't like a home sewing machine or anything.
Yeah. I think you definitely did the most tricky thing, because you're stitching fabric on fabric and seams on seams on seams, because there are a couple of areas when you're sewing jeans that are incredibly thick, because you have so many layers. And of course, belt loops, they have folded fabrics within themselves as well. So yeah, I can totally understand that. And when you're in that situation, there usually one thing, of course, if you're having a home sewing machine, you can't use that extremely heavy, really thick denim. That's unfortunately impossible. And of course the needle. And another thing that helps is that the you need to keep the presser foot flat when you're sewing on bulky layers, because if you're sewing bolt loops, the presser foot will be otherwise leveled up or down, because it's not it's just a small distance where the presser foot is flat. So what you should do is use a hump jumper or like a fold of fabric that levels the presser foot so it sews straight. Now, of course, we are doing this audio only, and you can also watch it on video. I didn't prep, so I don't have to show it. But check out the hump jumper. It's called Ginamig, because if you get the presser foot level, then it gets much easier for it to feed, because that's usually one of the reasons why the needle and the thread gets stuck inside, because it doesn't get help with the feeding.
Is that like the kind of like small plastic blocks, I would say?
Exactly, yeah, exactly. And you can also use like the box where needles comes in. It's similar heights. And a lot of people just use folded fabric or folded denim fabric. So, and if you want to see this exact method, you should definitely go over to my YouTube channel, The Last Stitch TV, where I have a video on top stitching. I will definitely link to it in the show notes where you can see exactly the different ways and the tools I'm talking about here. Because that's one of the reasons belt loops it's so difficult, because it's such an uneven surface. So yeah, I'm not saying that I could have saved your project, probably not, but but at least I find it extremely helpful.
Yeah, but that's good. And we can say that we now have an Instagram account, stitchingtalespod, and we will try to, if there are any specific things like this, for example, we will add a picture there so you can see it as well.
Yeah,
so
great point.
Follow us there if you want to see more pictures of what we talk about.
Yeah,
but yeah, those are good things to like very specific to sewing denims, I think. Do you have any other like tools or you want to recommend?
Yeah, I think another thing that is important to know, and what I made a big mistake when I was sewing my first pair of jeans, is the fact that because you want to use heavy thread, especially for the top stitching, because it's so beautiful, you don't want to use a regular, narrow, thin sewing thread. But unfortunately, if you're using a regular home sewing machine, you can't put thick top stitching thread in the bobbin, because it will just jam up and you will have an absolute mess. And similar things that you are talking about will happen, because you get thread jam, the needle will be pulled inside the bobbin case. So you need to use regular sewing machine thread in the bobbin, and then you can go use the heavy thread in the needle. So I'm sure now there's so many different resources so that you won't end up doing that. But back when I was starting to learn how to sew my own jeans, there were no like information about this. You had to learn it the hard way. So if you try that, don't worry. It's just because your machine is not equipped to handle it. And I've tried to like reduce the bobbin tension, because usually on the bobbin you can have a little screw that you can adjust the tension. You can get a better result, but I still think for your own mental health, basically your sanity, you should definitely use regular thread. And the good thing is that if you buy like denim thread from Gutermann or whatever, they always have matching thinner thread in the exact same colorway. So, and if you want to, you can also use like the fabric thread if it's dark navy, because then if you look on the inside, because the thread is matching the fabric, you won't see any wonky stitching. If it's so you can do whatever you want. I mean, no one is going to look inside your jeans except yourself, probably, or maybe someone else as well. But I don't think that's probably not the thing that they are most concerned about then, the uneven top stitching.
No, absolutely not. But what do you prefer? Do you prefer to use a contrasting color on your top stitching, or more that it like dyed to match as a denim?
I like to use contrasting stitching. I like the golden colors. I think it's really nice. And I one of the things I really enjoy is top stitching. I find it very, very like a high concentration thing, but it's also very relaxing in a way. So yeah, I actually really, really enjoy it. So yeah, I use contrasting thread. And speaking of top stitching, another thing is really helpful is if you get one of those presser feet is plurals, I think. You're always going to hear us struggle with English and here and there. there is a blade, or it's called like edge stitch presser foot. So you line the blade along the seam or the edge where you're going to do. So it's very easy to get a straight top stitching if you're stitching close to the fabric edge or close to a seam. So you just have that blade, it's going to be really, really straight.
Is that the one that has like a metal thing, like vertical, like in the middle of the presser foot?
Exactly. Yeah. So it can also be used for blind hemming. Different brands have different versions of it, but yeah, it's a really, really good presser foot. I love it. It's because it's hard to sew straight. It's hard.
and especially if you like to one row is one thing, but then you get the other one to be exactly the same. Yeah, it can be super tricky.
It is tricky, and it takes practice. I don't think anyone is going to excel in top stitching. And I always, sometimes people might ask, do I use a twin needle? Because a twin needle, of course, you get an exact same distance, so you don't have to sew a second row. But because of the nature of denim, and a twin needle is a zigzag underneath, I find it easier to actually sew 2 straight rows of stitching instead. But you can definitely, if you're not using too thick of a denim and you're not bothered by the zigzag stitch underneath, there are special denim twin needle with a slightly larger distance between the needles. So you can get actually nice top stitching that way too. But I prefer to, and I always I use the presser foot edge then for the second stitching. So it's a nice distance, maybe like 5 millimeters, 6 millimeters. Which is let me see here, 1/4 of an inch. I really felt very flattered because someone said that we did a good job of converting on the fly between fractals and centimeters and metric system. So
yeah, it's kind that you say we, you. I can barely know, like okay, inch, sure, I got you, but beside that I'm like, oh no.
That's something I had to learn as a sewing content creator, in trying to use the English language. So that was not something we learned in school. I have no idea what that is.
No, and no, it does not come natural or anything to us.
Oh.
But one seam that is very, how do you say, specific to denim is the. Now I don't. Is it the wrap seam?
Flat felt seam. Flat felt.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Do you do that as well, or do you, how to say, just use a regular straight seam and then overlock?
I use both, but depending on how much work I want to take on. In my book Sewing Jeans,
and maybe first, explain what is a flat felt seam.
Flat felt seam is where you normally, if you're sewing woven fabrics, you overcast the edges, your edge stitch, using a zigzag stitch or an overlock stitch, and then you sew the seams together. And the overlock stitch or the zigzag will prevent the fabric from fraying, but you can also enclose the edges by basically wrapping them around. So if you look into store-bought denim, I think that most of your jeans on the inseam will have the flat felt seam, and usually in the crotch seam, and also sometimes in the yoke seam. So there you won't see the edges of the fabric because it's going to be enclosed, which means that you don't have to overcast it to prevent fraying because it's enclosed. So this is a high-level technique that they use special machines and tools to do in the garment industry. So I think there is a presser foot for flat felling that you can use, but it doesn't provide the same nice result as industrial equipment. And the benefit of doing a flat felt seam is just not the fraying, it's also that it's very comfortable because everything is nicely enclosed and flat. But shameless plug for my book Sewing Jeans, because in there I show a method that I actually figured out myself. So and it works extremely well. It's a little bit fiddly because you have to adjust the seam allowance a little bit, but once you do that, it's going to look really, really nice. So I use that method, and honestly, I think if you look inside the jeans that I've sewn using that method, it looks almost like it was done on an industrial machine. So you can do it absolutely on your home sewing machine if you're ready to do a bit of a prep work, perhaps.
Oh, that's so cool, because it's, I mean, that seam, it looks so nice since it has a really clean finish on the inside as well, since you don't see any overlock seams or anything. But just like if you, even on the industrial sewn jeans, you usually have the outside seam. That is usually done by that. But then the inside seam, that one is actually sewn with a straight and then overlock, because in the industry you can't have that kind of a seam on both the inside and the outside, because it's a special kind of machine. So if you're gonna do this at home, like, it's totally fine to have one of the leg seams just regular, and it's fine to have all the seams regular also if you prefer that.
Absolutely. And because if you're watching the video version, I actually made a quick skip to the to my dress. So if you can see here, this is a flat felt seam that I've done myself on my regular home sewing machine. I think it looks pretty neat if you're watching the YouTube version of this. You can't really tell, right, that it's done. I think there are a few uneven stuff, but for the most part it looks really, really nice. And also I did a yoke as a flat felt seam as well, you can see.
Yeah, I think especially when it comes to, I don't really personally care if the side seams are like regular or with a flat felt, because you don't see that. But the yoke seam, that one you see. So that one I really like. When you buy a pair of jeans, like, you know that those are a little bit, you know, there are denim nerds out there who like, yeah, that's the way you have to do it.
Yeah, and I agree. That's the cool thing, because sewing, you know, it could be like, you know, it's nice to sometimes challenge yourself if you have this idea and you want to try it out. Of course, I love that, you know, the nerdy stuff, and also when I did the book, I met up with a guy here in Sweden that is like a production manager between different garment companies and the factories and the pattern makers. So he's basically connecting everything to make it happen. So he's not primarily designing himself, but he said that he had this idea that he wanted to create a denim brand that actually looked like had a more handmade touch, so a little bit uneven seaming. So we had like done some research and contacted the factory in Turkey and everything. So, but he felt that he didn't get the kind of response from, you know, the regular buyers that this were going to be a thing. But he was super excited about this concept because he felt that the perfection makes the jeans lack character. So I love that he said that, and I think that's something I want to share with you listening here, because of course if you are not a professional and don't have access to professional things, you won't have exactly perfection, but I think it's also the way it looks more personal. So there's definitely some denim nerds that really into the look that isn't perfect.
Yeah, no, definitely, and that makes it so much more unique. I mean, just for example, like the puckering, when you have the top stitching, the kind of puckering it creates, especially on the outer side seam, like that's the thing. If it looks too well done, too flat, it's just, it doesn't get the denim feeling, you know. It has to have a little bit of puckering. That's what makes it so beautiful. And I'm trying to remember now that I saw on someone on Instagram that's sewed a pair of denim and used it in a really dark denim as well. Used it and washed it. And then when it became like a washed pair of denim, and with those like, what do you say now? When the fabric is the color is fading away, because you have worn it so much. They looked so beautiful. I mean, the most beautiful denims I've ever seen. Because when you buy that in store, they are like fake. They are like washed to get the right color, and they are like with treatments and everything. And then all those fadings are like exactly the same for every pair of denim, and it it looks fake. But those jeans, when they have really been worn and the color starting to fade, it's so beautiful. And I think few garments actually becomes more beautiful with age. And I think linen fabric washes really well, and denim. I mean, it's I love I love that look when it has been really dark denim that has actually been fading away with because they have been worn.
Yeah,
I love it.
I so agree. It becomes so much more living. You have bring out such a good point, Malena. Yeah, because there are a few things that actually becomes more beautiful with age, and yeah, denim is definitely one of those fabric. And as you say, also because if you wear it yourself, it's gonna fade a lot according to your body. So the knees is gonna be placed where your knees are at, and the whiskers and everything is gonna be placed on your own thighs. So it looks more natural and organic in a way, because it's actually happening on your particular body rather than someone else placing those whiskers and worn down things. So that exactly it becomes like one with your body. You can see signs of your own body on your own pair of denim. Also, fun fact, if you're not familiar with it, but as Malena said, it's all done in the factory, and all jeans are actually sewn. That was what this guy taught me, at least. I think it's true for most production. Most jeans are actually sewn in dark unwashed denim, and then they go through this laborious process in different washes with different chemicals and sand wiping and sand washing and everything like that, just to create that. So it's a lot of work that goes into creating worn jeans. And also, even though it looks kind of cool in a way, it also has the fact that these denim don't have much longevity. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but they are not really made to last, because when you buy them, they're already worn down with all the brushing and the chemicals. And so unfortunately, they're going to start this is integrating quite fast. But if you do work with a good quality denim fabric, your jeans is going to last for many years, and as Malena says, it's going to fade gradually and beautifully. So I think that's also a thing to remember, and that's a pro of actually not going crazy with the washes and everything.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think a good thing to mention also with the color, the indigo, that one is how can I say, it washes away a little bit every time you wash it, and I think I don't know how is it in store right now. Is it can you actually buy real indigo denims, or is it synthetic coloring? Do you know how easy it is to get real indigo?
I think it's really difficult. Sometimes some of the Japanese denim brands seem to have used real indigo, but it's very uncommon. But if you get that, it's a really beautiful color, and I really love it. But of course, it's pricey. But if you had bought a pair of jeans that was made in a factory using that kind of premium denim, you would still pay so much money. So to me, it's worth it. But yeah, I would. It's very rarely labeled, so my guess is that most of it is quite synthetic for sure. Mm.
Yeah, and that's also going to affect. That's not going to be washing away in the same way as an indigo fabric would be. So that's just good to have in mind what you can expect, how the fabric is going to behave. Yeah. But tell me more about the pattern making part. I'm curious about that. When you have sewn your own jeans, have you made the pattern yourself, or have you bought a pattern, or how did you do?
Yeah, I actually ended up doing my own pattern. Because when I started sewing jeans, there weren't that many jeans pattern out there. So actually, the first jeans pattern I used, which is actually a basis of the pattern I use myself now, is for a while Burdastyle had a US-based affiliation that was called Burdastyle, but they were one of the first ones providing PDF sewing patterns. This must have been 15 years ago, 15 maybe more, and they had a pair of jeans that was really on point with the trends. It was called the Anita jeans, and so what I've done basically, I've used that particular jeans pattern and then made lots of different adaptations for my own jeans. So I'm actually 15 years on, basically using the same base jeans pattern. Then I just adjust it if I want to do like straight leg or a little bit wider leg or skinny jeans, or I don't do really skinny jeans but more narrow. So I think my recommendation is that you should definitely get your fit right and ensure that everything, because the problem with jeans, the way you sew them, you can't really fit as you go, unlike you could do with a pair of trousers. So you definitely have to do some samples before and adjust, and especially getting, I think, the crotch right and all the stuff. And again, as we often say, just go to your own wardrobe and check out some of the jeans that you already have that you like the fit of. So if you know where on the body you want the waist to be and how wide the waistband should be, how wide they should be over the hips and the hem circumference, you have all the answers because it's already there. So you don't have to start from scratch. So that's what I do. I just measure everything that I like, and then I just adapted this old Burda style pattern. So it's very different from the Burda style pattern, but that was how I started, and then it kind of evolved to my own pattern.
Yeah, and I can really recommend that. Put your effort into making one pair of jeans fit really well, and then use that one as a base to develop if you want to have different type of leg widths or something like that, because that is so much more easier than to get a new pattern and then you have to redo all the fittings. So if you have like if focus on getting a perfect fit on one, and then it's easy to adjust it yourself to change the design.
Yeah, it's actually really easy to adapt the pattern. And in my book Sewing Jeans, I also show different ways if you want to do bootcut jeans or skinny jeans, or if you want to do jeans that only has an inseam and not an outseam, so you get this selvage straight. So there are lots of, and as Malena says, if you just get the proportions right and you know how you want to look at all the body, it's really easy to add a few centimeters or reduce and everything. You just need to figure out the crotch is of course really important as well to get that right. So yeah, it's definitely, so I can totally understand, because nowadays there's so many different jeans patterns out there, so you might feel tempted to like, oh, this and this, whoa, I want to try this and this and this. But honestly, I think you should stay to one pattern, really tweak that, because it's so much work starting over every time you see a new shiny jeans sewing pattern.
And I think it's good that there are a lot of patterns now on the market to choose from, because of course everyone is gonna have a little bit different fit, and that's a really good thing, because then maybe you need to try out a few different patterns. If the first one, like, it's too far off to your fit, then you can try another company's pattern to see if that is a more like suiting to your body type. So like, try around but then see which one is the best and work on getting the perfect fit on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good thing now, because obviously there are so many styles and everything. So a lot of sewing pattern brands now has really great jeans patterns that looks like the look feels very up to date and on trend. Because I think back in the days when I started sewing my own jeans, a lot of they looked kind of like a little bit aged in a bad way. How should I put this? I don't think the correct word is mom jeans, but they didn't look like casual trendy jeans. I think mom jeans used to be at least a very trendy jeans, so I think I shouldn't say that those were untrendy, but you could definitely, it was very different from the way jeans look when you get them in stores. So, but now I feel most sewing jeans pattern that comes today, they are very aligned with what you can actually find in stores, and what I think relate to most people looking for a jeans pattern. So you have lots of different options. And I also, on my website, thelovestitch.com, I also have a page where I collected lots of different jeans sewing patterns. I haven't updated in a while, but most of the patterns are still for sale. So I think both for men and women, or whatever gender you identify with, there's a lot of different options. So yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's a great place to start then to see what's out there on the market.
Yeah.
Cool.
What else should we talk about when it comes to jeans? I think...
Was it easy for you to do the fitting, or did you have to make a lot of samples and adjustments?
I think I lucked out a little bit in the beginning because it wasn't too off, but I think I maybe tweaked the pattern 4 or 5 times. So sometimes also you have to tweak it a little bit depending on the fabric, but I think it took about 3 or 4 tries to get it really right, and that was also I actually sew a pair of some finished jeans, and then I figured out, maybe I want to lower the waist a little bit, or I did a few tweaks like that. So I'm always.
And did you make the samples in like denim fabric or like a muslin fabric?
I actually used a very cheap denim fabric because sometimes you get those. They don't look very nice, but they work for that particular fabric. And also, I think I probably use regular like cotton muslin fabric. It's actually too thin, but for some things it helps to get, because I think jeans are so much about proportions as well. It's not just the fit. You want to get everything like look right. So I've used regular cotton fabric as well.
Yeah, and of course that affects also if you have a stretched denim or like a really heavy duty fabric with no stretch in it. So
yeah,
the test garment needs to be in a similar kind of fabric, otherwise it's not gonna be correct.
Yeah, you bring out a very important point. Absolutely, you can't sew a sample for a pair of skinny jeans and not use fabric that has ample amount of stretch, because it's going to be awful. And the same also if you want to make a pair of really rigid straight leg jeans, it's not going to look and hang the same if you use a lot of lycra, because it kind of affects how the feel of the fabric as well. It's different. It doesn't as fluid. It becomes a little bit. It sounds counterintuitive, but in a way, a lot of lycra makes the fabric stiffer. I don't know the right word here, but it's the hand of the fabric is different, right? Because if cotton can be, it kind of, when you wash it's kind of soft, but lycra makes things a little bit more rigid in woven fabric in a way. So
I haven't thought about that, but yeah, that's true.
It reduces some of the natural flow and softness. I think it's wonderful because of the stretch, but yeah, so you have to think about that as well. If you, for instance, you want to do like a flared leg pants, which I think is coming really strong right now, if you use a fabric that has maybe 8 or 10% lycra, it's not gonna flow, because when you do wide leg pants or like a palazzo, you want kind of softness in a way. It shouldn't look too rigid. So definitely skinny jeans, you can go for higher lycra content. But my personal opinion is that if you want to do straight leg jeans or wide leg jeans, I think 1 or 2% of spandex or lycra is enough. You don't need more than that. Instead, just make sure that the pattern is properly fitted.
No, but that's good to know. And what would you say is the difference? Because now you have just recently made several blog posts about when you sewed a pair of like more dressier pants. What would you say is the biggest difference, like in the sewing compared to regular pants and when you sew jeans? Is there anything like for the zipper, for example? Is that do you sew it in a different way? Or are there any other differences?
I think the main difference is the sewing sequences, and because you do so much top stitching, you have to use a different assembly sequence because there are so many things that you need to plan for. One of the great things when you're sewing top stitching on denim is the fact that you can sew a lot of stuff in sequence. You don't have to start and stop. So for instance, speaking of the zipper, when you are doing a regular pair of pants and a zipper, then you normally only have one stitching line when you top stitch the zipper. But when you are doing a jeans zipper, you are having 2 rows. And the cool thing, and I highly recommend that you check out a video done on this topic as well on YouTube, how to sew a jean zipper, is that you sew both rows in one continuous sequence. So you can actually start at the top, and then you top stitch, and you pivot, so the same distance as the second row, and then you pivot again, and you stitch up, so you start and stop at the same place. So those are the things that it's different, because you have to top stitch and think about sequences, basically. So how can I top stitch 2 rows without having to stop and back stitch and just figure out there's a sequence. It's same for back pockets. There's a sequence, so you can basically start and stop, so you don't have to go back and do everything. So those are, I think, are top stitching definitely is probably one of the bigger things that is different when you're making jeans compared to a regular. But a lot of techniques are the same as well. I mean, the basic techniques for a zipper is the same. Sewing the waistband is similar. When you're sewing the belt loops, again, you use less top stitching for the most part, but you have to do some top stitching depending on the way you insert the belt loops.
And do you, in your book that you have written, do you talk about, like, have you made like a sewing description for each and every step then for denim, or how have you made the book?
Yeah, it's exactly that way. So the book begins with or the sewing instruction begins with a diagram where you see all the things on jeans. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sequence, and then the book just follow that step. So where you start, because just like with trousers and sewing with knits and everything, you will be more successful if you use the right sequence. So for instance, with jeans, I highly recommend that you start with the front pockets, and then you sew the zipper, which you do with both front pieces together, so you don't start sewing the back piece, and then you attach the yoke and the back pockets, and then you start actually sewing the garment together. So before the pants, that's also why it's so important to get the fit right, because you don't want to end up in a situation where you've done so much work with the front pockets and the zipper and the back pockets and yoke, everything looks beautiful, and then you sew the jeans together, like the legs and the hips, and you go like, wow, this doesn't fit at all. Then you spend probably literally days sometimes, or at least many hours, not wasting your time, kind of, in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you could basically, I mean, now I'm sure that if you buy a PDF pattern, that they have good sewing instructions as well. Yep. But you can basically buy any pattern and then use your book as a guideline of how to do it, basically. Yes,
exactly. And the book uses a lot of photos as well, and also, so yeah, definitely it's very visual, step by step instructions. So with a lot of illustrations as well. So I think it's a good companion, because I think today, as we talked about in a previous episode, the sewing instructions, especially from the indie sewing patterns, are usually top notch. They're really, really good. So what I tried to do with the book is just level up that even more detailing, and because you can see the photos as well, I think you get a really good understanding. And I also think what my book can be a good resource for is that I are basically showing the garment industry techniques for sewing jeans. So there won't be that many instructions that you will find in a regular sewing book, and a lot of sewing patterns as well. So there are little tricks and stuff like that when you're sewing your waistband, things like that. So I basically, and you wonder, how did I figure that out? Well, I just ripped open.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna. How did you do the research?
yeah. So what I did, I just basically studied a lot of jeans, and I also got some tips from people in the industry. But
who, where, how, where? I'm interested.
Yes, because So there's in Sweden there's the Borås, where you were actually the exchange student. I got connection to some people there that works in that business, so that helped a little bit. But most of all, actually, what I did was that I just bought several jeans at the flea market secondhand store, and I just ripped them open, and then I really learned some really new techniques. For instance, how to sew a waistband where you use special folding and wrapping technique. So if you can also see this in my book, and so there are a lot of different tricks, and of course how to do the seam allowance for flat felt seam, measuring those and figure out like you need to adjust the one of the seam allowance. So basically just add and you know how they were interfaced, what kind of material they use for interfacing. So it's a combination of a lot of different things. So this didn't happen overnight. So when you get to the book, you get years of research.
But I think that's such a good tip to actually buy something secondhand and to open it up, because you learn so much by doing that, and to really see how has it been done, and to open up the waistband and see how all the seam allowance are like folded and placed, and it's so interesting to do it, not just on denim, but on anything, like to open up a jacket or something that has a lining and you can't actually see how it's done on the inside. And especially on older clothes, I think it's really interesting to do, because a lot of things have been simplified today because everything needs to be cheap. So you remove several steps and it just is so fast. But on older garments, there can really be interesting techniques done if you open it up and see how they did it.
Yeah, it's definitely we have so much resource, and as we talk about some of the construction methods used in the garment industry is a little bit different than traditional home sewing techniques. But I think we have a lot of learned from the garment industry, because they have a very streamlined process and a lot of different ways that perhaps sometimes think that we make it a little bit overly complicated when we are sewing for ourselves. And some of the instructions I feel, especially in some general resources, I think could be done a bit more simple. I think that's because the garment industry is dealing with time, and time is money, so they have to be really effective and clever and avoid unnecessary extra steps. So I think again, they have taken years and decades and maybe centuries to figure out certain things. What is the best method? So it's fascinating to see that regardless of what type of denim brand you're looking into, a jacket or a sweater, you're going to see some very common ways of doing things, because it's kind of like proven technique that is just basically like becomes a standard way of doing things in the garment industry, regardless of where the garment is produced.
Yeah, and in the industry you have, especially when it comes to the woven, and you have so many specific machines to different things. So, I mean, if you just have a sewing machine, don't worry if it's not gonna look like exactly as a store-bought denim. Like, no, don't compare it in that sense, because they have specific machines for the bar tacks, for the top stitching, for doing that felt seam and everything. So if we have just one machine, we need to be a bit more creative with how we work with it.
Exactly. So, and that's a lot of the how the book approaches the subject. So it's basically how to get a similar result without having the access to all the machines. I mean, for instance, sewing a waistband, they have really great machines for that as well. It folds in and everything. So we need to do a bit more prep work in order to get those crisp folds, and so the waistband looks nice on the inside as well as the outside. But you can definitely achieve a nice result, but of course it won't be exactly the same as Malena says, so don't have unrealistic expectations of what you can achieve. But I think what many of us love about sewing is the fact that you can challenge yourself and try out new techniques and expand your knowledge box. And so, for instance, if you sew a pair of jeans and understand that, I think you have a lot of when you're going back to sewing regular trousers, you will have a much better knowing on how to do things like the zipper and the waistband. And of course, you're going to be really awesome at top stitching, because you're going to get a lot of practice. So you're going to be the master of top stitching after you've done your first pair of jeans.
Oh, that sounds great. And I love that you can mix techniques. Like you can take those techniques when you sew the regular trousers, or the opposite as well. Like you can of course simplify if you don't want to do that on a pair of denim. Like you can do it in the same way as you do regular trousers as well.
Yep.
I mean, it's really up to you on what level you want to have them on.
Exactly. And you can just do just fine with just a regular sewing machine. And of course, if you want to get the nice overcasting that you see in store-bought jeans, you should use an overlock machine, of course, but you don't have to. Again, as Malena says, it works really well with a regular zigzag stitch. Or if you want to do the flat fell seam that I talk about, you also do that on your regular sewing machine. So yeah, it's definitely not necessary, I think. You just get the fit right and pick a good fabric and a good pattern. I think you will be more than happy with the result.
Do you have any final tip to someone who is eager to start working with denims now?
I think the most important thing is basically to take your time and don't rush things, and be like accepting of the fact that making a pair of jeans is not something you're going to do in an evening. I think take your time, check the measurements, ensure the fit, and go slow on the top stitching and do all the prep work and everything like that. Just try to enjoy the process. It's not going to happen today. You maybe spend a week or 2 weeks on jeans, but that's not much time if you're going to have a jeans that you will love and wear for many years to come. So definitely just enjoy the process, and I think you're going to be really, really happy with the result.
Oh, that sounds really good. And when it comes to a trend, I'm not that how to say. I'm not very fashion forward, to be honest.
Even though you work in the fashion industry.
No. But I'm not a designer. I'm not on like keeping up with what's trendy. So how out of style am I when I say that my favorite pair of like silhouette on the garment, on trousers, like the boyfriend fit, like a little bit more of a chinos type of like tapered legs, a little bit loose fit on the top. How outdated am I?
I don't think you're that too updated, maybe. I think skinny jeans is worse. I think.
Oh yeah, but I'm there as well.
Yeah, I think skinny jeans, it's going to be a hard look to pull off in the upcoming years. Sorry, everyone. I know we have so many skinny jeans fans there, but I think skinny jeans has had a good run for 20 years, maybe. So, but I don't see many skinny jeans now coming up. But yeah, definitely I think the straight leg jeans is making a nice comeback. So that's probably going to be a better pick, as you say, if you like the slightly narrow shape. I think that's going to work. And of course, the wide leg jeans is going to come. And I think also we're going to see the waist getting lower again, because as everyone knows, the 90s is making a big comeback right now. So we're going to see some hip-hugging bootcut jeans, I'm pretty sure. I know some of you are going to scream now because it's such a like a look where you have so many memories, but yeah, I think it's gonna come back. But I think, honestly, I think straight jeans is never gonna go out of style, and they're never also gonna be the most trendy thing.
Oh, well, that's good to hear. I will see how I can say from a pattern maker's point of view, the absolute worst like silhouette was the. A few years ago, when I'm using air quotes now, like the mom jeans, when it kind of looked like it was ill-fitting, and the like back crotch seam, it felt so short that it was really like cutting into your bum. Yeah. And I was just like, is it supposed to look like that, or is it just ill-fitting? Like I can't tell if that's like, ooh. Yeah. It hurt my eyes, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. And I always felt maybe that's something, maybe someone who's 20 years old can pull
yeah,
off.
and I'm like, am I too old? Do I not just get it, or is it actually like just bad fit? I honestly don't know.
I don't know either, but
I'm sorry if I offend anyone now who has those jeans, but yeah.
yeah. I think it was supposed to be that way because they wanted to really like emphasize the tush or the derriere, right? So by having the crotch seam to kind of cut into the crotch, I think that was the point basically. So you get that kind of like accentuated shape for I know, but for me comfort is everything. So I could never imagine having something cutting into my crotch like that. It sounds absolutely awful. So I think I don't know how the trend is going to be there, but I still think it's quite tight fitting around the hips. It seemed to me still a popular look. So I think the boyfriend jeans is probably less popular as well now. It looks more like a regular straight leg jeans is more common than the tapered one. It's good to see. Neither of us is trend gurus, so take our word with a grain of salt. But at least I love looking in different type of brands they're offering, and I see very little skinny jeans now and a lot of flared and straight leg jeans.
Yeah, and I think also for me, like since I work in the industry and I've been doing that for 15 years now. You see a lot of like every season new trends, and it looks. It's not that often that it shifts like very much, but like I'm not that like I get my how to say like the new is always nice and the new trends are fun. It's like I get that cup filled by just looking at it, by working with it, by doing it. I don't need to wear it. I'm feeling most comfortable in my boyfriend jeans because they are a little bit lower on the hip, and I like that. For me, it's just more comfortable, and they are not super tight. That's super comfortable for me. So yeah, I'm gonna stick to that silhouette.
Yeah, I think
we'll see when I'm ready to change, but that's just what I feel comfortable in. So you don't have to follow like every single trend, like do what suits you the best, and also with different body types you feel more comfortable maybe in this or that and whatever. So like follow what you feel better with, than just looking at the trend.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely not something, and some trends will just appeal to a very small group of people because it's just too difficult to pull off and too uncomfortable, and you have to sometimes you have to have a quite specific body type to actually work with certain trends. So, but to me, I find it fascinating because, as I said, I keep harping on that I think skinny jeans is going away. What I will venture out to say now, I know a lot of people go, no, don't touch my skinny jeans. And I honestly think in 5 years, you won't have many skinny jeans in your wardrobe because you get influenced by trends regardless or not. I think you're gonna start gravitating to more straight leg jeans or slightly tapered jeans. I just know it. I'm sorry, but that's why we don't look the same. We do everyone, even though you're not into like fashion and trends, you still get so influenced. That's why we don't look the same as we did in the 70s or the 80s. You know, we don't have the same hair or the same type of colors. Or I find it fascinating that everyone, even the most resistant of people, still are influenced by trends in some ways.
Yeah, I love. I saw on Instagram a woman who was like, "Okay, so I'm a millennial. Look, I'm wearing my wide leg jeans. I don't wear skinny jeans anymore. I have my wide leg jeans." And it was also like, I'm not using a tank top underneath my blouse. I'm just having my blouse as it is. Maybe I should flip, like, I have a, what do you call it now? I'm losing my words.
Side part, no.
Side part, yeah, for the hair. Yeah. She was like, okay, I'm going to do a mid part. But no, that's too much. I'm still a millennial. I'm going to keep my side part.
Yeah.
So as you can see on me, I have a side part.
Yeah.
I'm not an early adopter. I'm maybe not even a late adopter.
Yeah, because if you're not
I
watching
never
this on
doubt.
YouTube, you should. Malena has a really distinct side part, so it's definitely a clear side part. And if you're watching me on YouTube, you will see that I've actually graduated to almost a mid part, because I definitely feel this trend is grabbing me. So I've actually moved it a couple of centimeters.
So slowly.
Yeah, slowly. So maybe if you check back on us in a year, you're going to see that I have an actual mid part, and Malena has moved her side part a couple of centimeters towards the middle. We'll see. That's my prediction.
Yeah, it will be fun to see in a couple of years how things are turning out.
Yeah. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. And of course, don't forget to check out our Instagram account, stitchingtalespod, where you will see photos that shows a lot of the things that we talked about today. And of course, check out our other resources. Links are in the show notes. And you can also go over to my website, theloststitch.com, to find more resources about jeans. And my book is called Sewing Jeans. So thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström.
And I am Malena Hjerpe.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.